Welcome to the Layman Seminary. Today what we're going to be doing in this video is part 2 of a Sunday School Quarterly outlining, basically, wherever we take an existing quarterly, like if you're a Sunday School teacher, and to be able to understand the structure so that you're able to learn from that, how they do it so that you can do your own, but at the same time also to follow along. And so the previous video, I gave a basic outline for the whole process, and there's basically 3 steps. There's preparation, you're preparing for class. There's implementation, that's your actual teaching, and then there's evaluation. That's where you're going back to the drawing board. You're reflecting on everything. Well, in preparation, there's 2 main C's that we're going to deal with. In the previous video, I talked about other C's, but for right now, we're just going to focus on these: context and content. Okay. Now, the first thing you want to do is you want to find the main structure of your quarterly lesson. And typically nowadays, most quarterlies kind of almost go in the 3 points in a poem type sermon structure. And so usually what that means is they'll give you the title in the beginning, they'll give you the passage, and then they'll give you the main point written in a sentence. And then throughout the quarterly, you'll find words in bold that are the subpoints for this main point. And you'll also sometimes see the principle written in other words somewhere underneath that section. And then you can come back and you can rearrange this later into a different format. But basically, here's the order of things. First off, like any other speaking or teaching, there's an introduction. So they're written introduction. And they'll have an icebreaker in there wherever they'll bring something in from the modern world, and they'll ask a question of the audience. Then you get into explanation. Now, the words in green are not used in the quarterly usually. Sometimes they are, but this is what's going on. So under explanation, the first thing is you got to orient your people to the context of the passage. And that's another word for that is the Bible world. And so if you're looking in a section of the quarterly where it's talking about the context of the passage, then you can look at how many paragraphs does it take to describe the context or what's going on there. And you can make a subpoints for each one of those. And so whenever you go to teach this, you can say, okay, let's talk about the context for a moment. And you have those points where you can make those. Then you get to the content of your passage. It's still the Bible world. And this is where you're actually studying the passage. And what you want to do at this point is you want to insert your subpoints from the main idea here. So those 3 ones that I mentioned that are often there to back up the main point, you would insert that. For example, if you're in Acts 20, which the next Sunday school lesson is, one quarterly had it this way: his commitment, Acts 20, his concern, Acts 20:25, and his commendation. And so what you start seeing from this is, okay, you recognize the bold points, and then you look underneath it and you see different paragraphs, or you see different subdivisions, different fonts and things like that. But basically, if you look at pretty much what every one of these subpoints is doing in a quarterly, is the first thing it does is it gives a description or an explanation of the passage. And then it gives an emphasis. It may have the words in bold, focusing on action words or key terms or things like that. And then there may be a question to ask, your audience. And then sometimes there may be a key doctrine. In other words, okay, this lesson is about evangelism and missions. Okay, and so basically, if you will just keep this main structure here: description, emphasis, question. They've already given you the main points. And so whenever you're talking to them, to your audience, or you're explaining something, you can emphasize, okay, in your mind, you need to explain or describe what's going on at the text. And then you need to give the emphasis for the text. And then you may need to give a question or something else to get your people involved or thinking here. And so you pretty much have that. Now, in this particular quarterly, they also have a Bible skill, and the Bible skill was compared this address to other addresses found in the Bible. So you could put that in here like that. And then they want you to draw a principle based on what you see from there. And principles, I think a lot of people talk about principles, but they're not explained very well. A principle is basically what the text says about God and man. Um, and usually they call them timeless truth principles, but it's more of like someone talking in a lecture or something rather than somebody preaching. A principle is supposed to be applied to the text, which is a different step, but a principle is more of a bridge between the Bible world and the congregation world, the Sunday school world, the people that you're speaking to. And so this is helpful to understand, because when you're drawing principles, you're not jumping to application. You're trying to think about the similarities and the differences. What's the difference between now and then? That type of thing like that. And then, of course, an illustration. Now, a lot of quarterlies have illustrations all throughout. They might have one main illustration. You can reorder that however you want. I mean, the main issue is that you have limited time to do a lot of different things. So whenever you read a quarterly, that is an example of what can be done. It doesn't necessarily have to be done in that way. So then you get to the application step, or what one quarterly calls my context, our context, not the Bible world. Sorry, that's not supposed to say Bible world. That's supposed to say our world, or let's call it Sunday school world, Sunday school group world. And in this, you're basically going through, and this quarterly particularly, it gave 3 principles at the end. And then it gave specific application. It mentioned things to discuss, to reflect on the passage, and then ends with prayer needs. So, of course, application would relate to the conclusion or the challenge of things going on. So that's basically it. Once again, you have your 3 steps: preparation, implementation, evaluation. This video emphasized preparation. The 2 C's, context and content, which you have right there. Finding the main point and then the sub points, and just ordering it basically according to description, emphasis, and question. And so there you have it. You have a structure where you can take a pre-existing quarterly and make your own outline from it. And I will continue to develop this and also show you how to integrate more inductive stuff. And so what happens is this, is that you start recognizing actually some of the Bible study methods that we use in studying a passage are used to even outline a quarterly. But what happens is that you start seeing how other people are doing this through the quarterly, and it gives you an idea about how to do it whenever you go to the text freshly and things like that. Just keep in mind that this is like a finished product for the person who was teaching or preaching. I mean, their outline that's in the quarterly. And that's important to understand, because you have to adapt it according to your audience and your people. And they done their best to put themselves in their shoes, but it's still not the same. We should trust in the Holy Spirit, and we should include as much of our Bible study as possible. And as we improve in those other Bible study methods, we use this less and less. I mean, we can still reference it, but it's just like a quick glance. You're like, oh, okay, that's confirmation, or that's a different direction. Maybe I should rethink something, or anything like that. Well, thank y'all for y'all's time. Please subscribe if you haven't. Hit the bell so that you can get notifications. Share this with others, and let us know what you think. God bless.